the most statistically significant player in NBA history. Wow. Those are the only people to ever do that.
Houston Rockets, Los Angeles Lakers tip off at 8:30. James Harden averaging 40 points over the last 21 games, 18 straight games over 30, and over 55 points in his last 2 games. Kelly Iko of The Athletic joins us now. You cover the Houston Rockets. How incredible of a run has this been for James Harden? And with this team, how long do they plan on riding just Harden being their entire offense?
I think it's incredible. I wasn't around the league to cover when Kobe and Elgin Baylor did those crazy streaks, and now you're seeing it on a nightly basis where the team really needs it at the most, and you're seeing him doing it in such an efficient manner. And the crazy thing is he knows that if he can hit 5 or 6 threes, he said, and I quote, it's going to be a 40-point night. And back then, you would think that maybe 30 points would be good, but now he's thinking 40, 50, 60. And I think as the games go on, you're going to see him trying to will his team to victory and back up the Western Conference standings.
Kelly, how you doing, man? It's Booz. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Big fan of you.
Thank you, brother. I got a question. James has been on a tear, as we just documented and talked about. Going forward, the schedule gets a little thicker. They're playing without CP3. Obviously, they're playing without Clint Capella. May have a signing coming up here soon. What other guy on the team is going to step up consistently to help him carry some of that offensive load, whether that's Eric Gordon or whether that's Gerald Green? Who you got?
I think Eric Gordon for sure. He kind of started the season a bit slow and consistent, but as you see him come back the last game, he was on a minutes restriction, but he is going to be needed to be offensive, aggressive, and for a consistent basis for them to, get some wins put together.
And Kelly, as you look at this team trying to go back deep into the playoffs again, is there any concern that James may run out of gas like he did last year, that someone definitely has to help him? Or are we looking at James being in that great of shape, this may be the year he can go all the way?
Yeah, definitely. Coach D'Antoni always talks about his biggest fear is, putting too much load and time on James's legs. And he's averaging almost close to 40 minutes in this 20-game stretch, which is pretty unbelievable. But with Eric Gordon coming back and Chris Paul returning next week possibly, and Austin Rivers with the team now, the idea is to give him some rest, because he is putting a lot of time in the dark days of the season where you're going to need him in May and possibly June, hopefully, for them.
Well, you mentioned Chris Paul. Earlier this week, Mike D'Antoni said, okay, Chris Paul should be back next week. What is that timetable? Is there a specific game that's now located as the game Chris Paul should come back?
No, we all know D'Antoni keeps things close to his chest, but I don't think there's a specific game that he has in mind, but it depends on Chris and how he looks, in training and practice.
All right,
next week for sure.
Yep. Yeah. Kelly Iko from The Athletic. Appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Chris Paul, I think, is the key to this entire equation, because when you look at James Harden's usage, we haven't seen this in what we can say the modern era, right? When you look at all the stats, it kind of goes back to Elgin Baylor or Wilt Chamberlain. Those are the names that you had. And like you said, look, 55 or more in consecutive games, there's 2 guys on that list, James Harden and Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing right now. He scored 58, and they lost the game. So this is a situation where when Chris Paul comes back, maybe we see this run of James Harden having this usage and these crazy stats go away, but it might be better for the Houston Rockets, right?
Well, we can say that, Chris, but James Harden is playing at such a high level, he's been able to hold down the fort. So if you're giving James Harden a rest, who's going to hold down his fort? So we're saying Chris Paul's going to come back and start getting 40 for his 10 straight games. We're saying Chris Paul's will come back and start getting 50 the way James Harden's getting. I don't think so. So what we're saying is when Chris Paul comes back, come back and be who Chris Paul is, and James Harden, you continue to do what you're doing, because it has to happen that way if we're thinking you're going to get back to a possible Game 7. Chris Paul's hamstring doesn't get hurt. Maybe they beat Golden State. See all these names I'm talking about? So that's why it has to be Austin Rivers. Is it Brandon Knight? Is it Eric Gordon? It has to be a collective of guys to help what James Harden's doing if they want to go deep again.
Certainly, James Harden is someone that if he's not on top of your MVP palette, he should be 1A or 1B, right? You can't have him. You can't have him at number 2.
If he's 4 or 5, then what NBA are you watching?
Well, there's another guy on top of that ballot or near there.
Who?
Giannis
Oh,
Antetokounmpo,
it better
the
be.
Greek
Absolutely.
freak.
It better
Oh,
be.
baby, we got to see another Giannis highlight
Oh,
against the Orlando